We will continue on with Ruth Danon, and I'm going to read you her biography. Ruth Danon's fourth book of poetry, Turn Up the Heat, has been published by Nirala Series. Her previous books are Word Has It by Nirala Series in 2018, Limitless Tiny Boat by Blaze Vox in 2015, Triangulation from a Known Point by North Star Line in 1990, and also a chapbook called Living with the Firemen by Zeising Brothers in 1980. She's also published a book of literary criticism, Work in the English Novel, published by Croom Helm in 1985, and it was reissued by Routledge in 2021. Her poetry has appeared in several anthologies. I'm not going to list all of them, but I will mention Stronger Than Fear, Poems of Compassion, Empowerment, and Social Justice. And we have had a reading from many poets from that anthology, including Ruth Danon. And Stephen Massamilla is here tonight, and he was an instrumental person in creating that anthology and getting it published. So it's a very important one for us. Her work was selected by Robert Creeley for Best American Poetry in 2002, and her poetry and prose have appeared in many, many important journals across the US and abroad. She's been a fellow of the Ragdale Foundation, Corporation of Yaddo, Ora Lerman Foundation, and the Virginia Center for Creative Arts. And she taught for 25 years in the creative and expository writing programs that she directed for the School of Professional Studies at New York University. And she was founding director of their Summer Intensive Creative Writing Workshop. Those workshops ran from 1999 to 2016. She's the founder of Live Writing, a project for the reading, writing, and performance of poetry, which has been operating since 2018. She curated a couple of series and co-curated them before the pandemic, and she's currently one of the curators for the newly created Beacon Lit Fest that took place in June of 2023. She lives in Beacon, New York, and she teaches through Live Writing and New York Writers Workshop. So we're thrilled to have you here tonight, Ruth, and I'm going to turn the stage over to you, and we're looking forward to hearing your work.
Thank you so much, Judy. Can everybody hear me? If you can't, flap your hand in the air. First of all, thank you, Judy, for having me and everyone at SoFloPoJo. So much fun to say. Thank you, audience, for coming. Thank you, all my friends, people I know and people I don't know. I'm very happy to have you here and happy to be here. I am going to be reading from my new book, Turn Up the Heat. And I'm going to do something. I'm going to actually share the screen because I don't want to be looking down. I wanted to, for people to be able to see me. And I think it's also conditioned a little bit by being hard of hearing and realizing how important lip reading can be. So lip reading and reading. So you will actually see the text, I believe, when I share the screen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Let me just say a couple of things about the book. It was written before, during, and after the height of the pandemic. It covers a number of geographic locations. Many of the poems take place in Sardinia, where I went right before the pandemic. So there are journeys in time and journeys in place, desert, and so forth. And there are a couple of things you need to know. You need to know that Galtali is a town in Sardinia, as is Orosei. And there are two significant figures besides my husband, who also appears as the husband appears in the poem, in the book. But Giordano Bruno, the 16th century heretic, who was burned at the stake in 1600, and Saint Anthony of the Desert, who was said to have stolen fire from the devil and brought heat into the world. The more local thing you need to know is that I hate being cold, and maybe that has more to do with the book than anything else. I don't know. Anyway, here we go. How We Live Now. This poem was written in the middle of the pandemic, and it occurs in the middle of the book. I am not reading poems in order. I am reading them in some fashion that I've constructed for tonight. How we live now. I have heard lately more than once of men falling out of their beds. Sometimes they hurt themselves falling out of bed and so resort to sleeping on the floor. And I have heard as well that the women living with the men who fall out of their beds are forced to sleep alone because the force that forces these men to fall out of their beds is dangerous to the women they sleep next to. I have heard lately of women eating dinner alone because the men who fall out of their beds and sleep on the floor go to sleep very early and so are not awake when the women are hungry. Don't you think these are strange times? We are wearing our masks indoors. When the women eat alone, they become particular, the place setting just so, the candles lit, one glass of wine, one piece of chocolate to end the meal. This is how we live. This is what we have come to. This next poem situates itself in Sardinia. It's called The Gamble. If you find me face flat down on the road between Galtelli and Orosei, do not assume I require prayer or pity. Know that at the feast of St. Anthony, I gambled on the wrong saint. I was betting on the saint of beautiful lost things from Padua, when I should have known that it was a hermit from the Egyptian desert who tamed the devil with stick and pig that I should have named my own. All night, fires insist and burn. White ash covers the ground. Where there was sun, now shadow. And when they strip cork from the bottom of the tree, trust it, the bark grows back. So now we move to the domestic, back and beacon, the frame. The machinery of the house isn't working. The word repair comes to mind. The dishwasher comes to mind. Something broke. Now something makes noise, sort of a whine or a cry or a mew. It was my doing. I mean, I broke off some small part of the machine without ill intention. The light flickers, or my eyes blink. I remember that once I wanted a bird bath or a fountain. I remember the flash of a cardinal, the extended wings of a hawk. So in Sardinia, when I was there, there is the Feast of St. Anthony. And what they do at the Feast of St. Anthony is they make an enormous bonfire, I mean, taller than a house. And from the middle of the bonfire, from the middle of the mound, there's a living tree that is sticking up. And when I saw that, it made me think of Giordano Bruno, who was burned at the stake in the Campo di Fiori. And I have a love of intellectual martyrs. And the two came to mind, St. Anthony and Giordano Bruno. And so this poem is called Against Nostalgia. It involves poetry and prose. It's written in parts. I am not going to number the parts or read the numbers. I will simply pause between the sections.
Ruth, excuse me, I hate to interrupt, but we're not seeing the poem on the screen.
Oh, you're
So
not? Okay,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
we can hear you and understand you very well, but
Yeah, do you want to? Let's try this.
okay.
Does that work?
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize.
All right.
If you want me to make it go away, I will, but for the moment, let's leave it.
It's great.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry. I've never done it this way before, but I thought it might be interesting. Against Nostalgia. In Sardinia, on the days before the festival of St. Anthony the Hermit, also known as St. Anthony of the Desert and St. Anthony of Egypt, the townspeople of Galtelli, usually unseen, usually hidden with their dogs behind walls, emerge, cut, gather, and pile twigs and branches around a hollow tree that rises high above the mound of wood. On the day of the feast, the old priest conducts mass in the bare basement of a new building that brings to my mind Giordano Bruno's cell after he tore in heroic fury the icons from the walls. In a cold basement hall, I sit with others on hard benches and stand with others who on command sing with one clear hegemonic sound. And later, led by others to a shared meal, I push away the pale boiled mutton flesh. I eat new potatoes, so many little earths orbiting the plate around red radishes that burn my throat. The meal is served silently by women only dressed in black, to men mostly sitting solidly. We are guests merely and motley. After the meal, I trudge with a silent crowd to the waiting pyre in a stubbled field, absent flowers, where a fire is lit and starts to burn, and I begin with mouth shut tight to take my turn 3 times around the breaking fire. When Bruno was led after 7 years imprisoned by the inquisitors into the field of flowers in the heart of Rome to be burned alive, he was accompanied by men who walked beside him, singing, hoping that at the last minute he would recant his vision, infinite suns and infinite earths, manifest and imminent. Bruno saw far into the future, could almost see the black holes and retreating galaxies of our own time. Into Bruno's mouth I placed a leather gag so he could not curse or speak or cry. The chief inquisitor, Bellarmine, was later canonized. Later still, the church apologized. A poet wrote, "It hurts to burn." I watch the flames rise higher than surround the hollow tree. Hours pass, revealed to me expired wood, still warm, twisted, blanched, and white as Bruno's bright and brilliant bones. And that quotation in the poem was from Adrienne Rich, from a poem called The Burning of Paper Instead of Children. Now I'm introducing you to the third character of the book, the husband. Many of these poems have to do with long marriage. The ongoing persists even though there is no way to count all the stars in the sky. Let's read them as metonymic of the internal universe. That's how it is with marriage. No way to count the ways it succeeds, fails, succeeds, remains tentative and stubbornly strong, even after so much time. It's our own universe, after all, the only one there is, the one we made. We tell the cats when they wish to venture into the hallway, the whole world is here. There's nothing out there at all. We stay flat out on our flat earth. We know that beyond our borders, there be dragons. Hic sunt. Here we are. So in this book, I try to use many forms. This poem is epistolary. It's called Guns or Butter. It's a political poem. And just preface it with a little information. The concept of guns before butter was laid out by William Jennings Bryan, Secretary of State in the cabinet of Woodrow Wilson. He resigned after Wilson decided to emphasize the production of weapons instead of the production of dairy. Dear someone, have you considered the possibility that we will, at some unknown point in the future, run out of butter? I am not using butter metonymically, but I do derive a small amount of satisfaction from using that word. But I really mean butter, and I really am worried. Dear someone, I have learned that animals, dogs in particular, do not like noise. Yesterday we heard cracks of noise through the branches on the other side of the road. Guns, it seems, not fireworks. The cats hid. They too dislike noise. Today they hide from the vacuum. Dear someone, Do you see why I still worry about the butter the cats love to eat from my hand? R. Dear someone, sometimes I'd just like to take a little nap in the afternoon. Don't you see how tired I am? So much churning at night, so little butter in the morning. R. Dear someone, you told me today that guns were flying off the shelves and I wondered where they were flying to. You told me today that you fear the future, the way everything ends, and you talked about that for a long time. Those flying guns make a lot of noise. At the first crack, the animals hide. Then they run to the window, sniff the air. I confess, I am thinking about noise and fear and flying. You are talking a lot, and I am thinking about the butter. R. Dear someone, don't you know you caused a lot of trouble with so much talk? You know how the blue garden chairs fell over in the rain? Plastic, they had no weight to push back against the wind. It's like that when you stop me from finishing the one simple thing I want to say. We are out of butter. So here is St. Anthony come to the surface. St. Anthony prepares for the desert. How long will I wait before someone knocks at my door? And when I open that rusty door, what will it take to break with the past? Must I cover my face and my swollen eyes with a sullen cloth? When I meet the devil in his dirty cave, will I spit or will I chew? So we have our own version of the devil. He has a house in Florida. This poem was written before the adventures at Mar-a-Lago of the last year, and it's called All Bets Off. Calculating the odds has become the new sport, as if a new sport were needed. What might be the likelihood of something changing, the weather, for instance, or discontent? The drain in the bathtub has stopped working, no way to hold the water in the tub, so everything drains away. At least it drains, since the odds were that if something went wrong, it would go the other way and the tub would stay full of scummy water, getting colder by the minute. Sometimes one can hear the odds. In a larger context, we resort to hope. Sometimes one can beat the odds. In a larger context, we resort to hope because calculation reflected upon becomes too risky. What can we do when the guilty party eats the evidence, tearing paper into tiny pieces, then stuffing those pieces into his filthy mouth or into the toilet? What were the odds of that? Odd it was indeed, but can we ever really calculate the outcome of such actions? St. Anthony's speechless. No vernacular in the icy desert, no pretty speech at the mouth of the cave where the devil hoards fire. The devil is a fool, cannot tell the difference between a stick and a snake or a pig and a poke. When Anthony's pig breaches the cave, he runs wild. He grunts and raises hell and hell. And so Anthony, holding a stick, hiding its fire, calms the pig, comes out of the cave, brings heat to the world. There are a lot of small poems in this book. This is one of them. The thickening. Stripped bare, the trees become angled limbs. And now the pale fact of sky insists on presence, on pressing itself all the way down to the ribbed earth. Who thinks of sky as weight? Who makes trouble out of air? Not the least of it. Another domestic poem. Not the least of it. Let's say the context is the bum knee that twisted in the night, started hurting, and kept me from sleeping for many hours. The knee was something to move away from. Or there's a sudden drop in temperature that turned me away from walking on a newly found path by the river. The drop in temperature is something to move away from. The day abandons me with its sudden cold. When the wind picks up, that is something else to move away from. Now the context is an Epicurean moment. Chopped dates and apricots, red wine, cloves, cinnamon, star anise, bring to a boil, cook for 15 minutes, let the thick paste cool, add walnuts. Serve in a pretty bowl. Then you have a list and a paste and a pretty bowl. That's better. No need to move away from that. And what of the insistent murmur of the television in the next room? Someone in the next room watches the television. Someone goes to sleep and the sound is gone. I am awake in this room. The question is, who moved away this time? You may catch the Rosh Hashanah reference in the list. The paste, the dates. We have lots to worry about, as you might imagine. This is one more thing to worry about. That Earth's magnetic field is weakening. They say this will make space travel far more difficult. No doubt, I say. No fucking doubt. This poem is one of a series that was written during the pandemic. It's called Riparian. Riparian has to do with what's at the edge of the river. But I like this sort of sound of repair that's in the title. Riparian. Observable world, redacted night sky, all clouds. Then the imagined world recedes. Receive now, like bread and butter, this tenuous offering, this hidden river. The rainy season. Out of nowhere, and for no explicable reason, 4 fire alarms in my building on the same rain-drenched day. Loud and incessant, bright lights flashed in the hallways. 4 times the fire company came with massive trucks and tall men. The men walked around the parking lot and climbed the stairs with their masks and hatchets, found nothing, proceeded to the machine room and turned off the alarm. And then it happened again, and a third time, and a fourth, always the big red trucks and the tall men and the hatchets and the walking around and the climbing of stairs. By the third time, everyone in the building stayed in their apartments. This is what passes for excitement in my life. Also that the small cat, striped to the hilt, morning and night, curls comma-shaped against my thigh. For months, she licked the fur off her belly, a manifestation of anxiety. There have been no more alarms today. It has stopped raining. Fur is growing on the cat's belly. We come to the title poem of this book. As I said, I'm not reading in the order in which they appear. In the actual book, it appears much earlier. But I made you wait for the title poem. Turn up the heat. All day we have been talking one way or another about heat. We wanted at first a 2-faced wood stove, one that would warm one room and another at the same time. Then we thought of 2 wood stoves, easier to install, less damage to the structure of the rooms. Those who know me know that I fear nothing more than I fear cold. We decided on 2 stoves that could be installed at different times, that would serve different needs. We all have needs, but they are not always the same needs. My need is to avoid cold. My need is not to be afraid of what I fear. Later, we talked about fear, how some are afraid to walk down streets at night or afraid to step outside of the house now that the entire planet is sick. My fear seems small, just the cold frightens me. They say that what we most fear is what will kill us. In the hospital where I spent too much time, I begged for warm blankets. Sometimes they had them, sometimes not. This poem is called The Ruins. It takes place in Sardinia, and it may be sort of a response to the first long poem against nostalgia. It is called The Ruins. And this one and the previous poem did appear in the Stronger Than Fear anthology, so I thought I would include them here. The Ruins. Pools of water over pitted stones near Gilarza, where I came late to the moment of revelation. The women teaching said a grave, said all were once alike in the huge pit, men and women and children in the same place. Even dogs were buried together. Until invaders, men, built towers with circular stairs I did not climb. And after the towers, it was everyone interred alone in death. Walking away, I saw coming towards me ewes and their lambs in the rare grass, bells at their necks, ringing a new story. I'm going to close with a poem called Gambles. As you can see, gambling is kind of a motif in this book. Gambles. Lately, I turn on all the lights in the house, betting on illumination to be literal. Light leads the way from one room to the next. Eyes adjust to dim light. Long tunnel, that cliche. The light at the end, etc., pretty far off. The temerity of small animals, their tenacity and mine. What I gain or lose, a bet, time will tell, another cliche. I study new lines in my forehead, the punchline of the joke, buy the lottery ticket. I was supposed to do that. Instead, I consider the unmade bed and the luxury of disorder, the tuft of cotton at the edge of the rug, always at the edge of something. When I skip over the border, my number comes up. Now what's off the edge of the page causes a change of direction. Can I say it? Out I went with the bathwater. That primal disaster. All bets off. Cause and effect. An abject relationship to this fact. Never to have been wanted. Pathos. The clumsily written headline in the local paper. 2 children hit by a car eating ice cream. The fact, the child's foot was caught under the wheel of the car. Another fact, this time nobody died. Nevertheless, it's safe to bet there's always a need for one form of extrication or another. Would you have liked me better if I had gambled nothing? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ruth. That was wonderful.